Welcome to PlayPianoTODAY.com. This is Chapter 1 from the piano lesson series titled Slash Chords. Today we're talking about a very powerful concept. It's called slash chords. It's a real simple way to get fantastic fat chords with minimal brain effort. All these thick, fat chords that I'm playing are very simple to understand once you get the concept of slash chords. Let's take a look at what this means. Like I said earlier, slash chords can be used to very easily create thick chord extensions like 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths with very minimal brain effort, which is a great piece of news for me. Today we're going to be turning dominant 7 chords into fantastic sounding 11 chords. Okay, and if that sounds overwhelming, stick with me. We're going to look at this by the end of the lesson. Just one quick note. Everything in this lesson is based on our original course titled Pattern, Piano, and Keyboard. You can find that on the net at PlayPianoTODAY.com. That course teaches you to play any song on the piano or the keyboard by ear using the revolutionary technique of rhythmic patterns. In addition, in that course we go through every conceivable type of 7th chord. So that's a basic foundation for this lesson. But at this point, I'm going to assume that you've gone all the way through that course and you're very familiar with those concepts. One other quick note. We also have some courses online that are called fat chord voicings. P-H-A-T, meaning something that's rich and delicious and excellent and first rate. But fat chord voicings is actually a step up from what we're doing here today. Today in this lesson called Slash Chords, we're making our first excursion into the land of higher chord extensions, and we're using these slash chords to easily grasp and get our minds around the concept. So if it sounds a bit technical, or if you've been looking at the fat chord voicing lessons that we've got, first go through this lesson today. Slash chords are an excellent first step into the world of higher chord extensions. As you were going through pattern, piano, and keyboard, you found out that to construct a dominant 7th chord, in this case, G dominant 7, you first use the root, the 3rd, and the 5th to create a major triad on the bottom and added a dominant 7th to the top. That's the first way that piano players learn to play dominant 7th chords. And we're going to use that in this lesson to show you kind of a starting point. But by the end of the lesson, we're going to change that G7 chord, or G dominant 7, into this, which has actually the same exact function, but has a whole new sound to it. This is actually G11, and it really opens up your music. Sounds like rocket science when I say G11, right? But it's actually very simple to play once you understand the concept of slash chords. But again, I'm going to start very simply. I'm going to play all the way through an old spiritual, just using the standard voicing of the dominant 7th chord, with the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the dominant 7th, all bunched together, okay? This will give us a starting point. Here it is. In this example, you'll see 2 different dominant 7th chords, G7 and D7. Again, I'm going to assume that you know how to construct those chords as we go through this. Here we go. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Now we're going to look at taking all those dominant 7 chords and changing them into fantastic slash chords. Now for the slash chord transformation. Let's use that G7 as our guinea pig again. Now, if you had a giant music theory brain, and you probably do, you'd know that to construct G11, you've got to use the notes G, B, D, F, A, and C. It's a big, giant gorilla chord when you play it like this. But I just want to look at the last three notes, F, A, and C. When you isolate them, you can tell it's pretty easy, right? It's an F major triad. But we're going to use it in the context of G. How far away is this F major triad from the root G? How far is that? Looks like about 3 light years, right? But let's make it simpler. Let's drop this F major triad down an octave. Now how far is it from the root? Here's the root. That sounds pretty awful. But we're not done. Okay, now how far is it from that root? Well, it's a whole step lower. So you go down from the root a whole step, build a major triad, and kick it up an octave. Voila! Now you've transformed any dominant 7 chord into a fantastic 11th chord, right? I wouldn't call this a chord voicing per se, because the notes really are kind of stacked in their natural positions still. We're just omitting the 3rd and the 5th. But the main thing we did today is we made this simpler on our brain, right? So if you come across G7, you can do this, and everyone will say, that's kind of cool. Or you can do the math in your head and say, okay, down a whole step, and make your major triad and kick it up an octave. All of a sudden, you are the man or the woman. I don't know what you are, but you can play a nice 11th chord now. Let's do the same thing now with D7, and then we'll play the same song again, of course, using the slash chords, and everyone will say, hey, that's much nicer. Here's D7. You know the equation. Here's D7. So someone says D7, you say, nah, I'm going to play D11, fatten it up. So you go down a whole step, construct a major triad, kick it up an octave, include the root, you've got D11. Everybody says, wow, that is way better. And now that you know the forbidden secret of the slash chord, we're going to play the same song again, but every time we come to a dominant 7th chord, we're going to use these 11th chords, and the sun will come out. It'll be beautiful. Hey, you know what? Before we play the song, I want to throw one more thing at you. I think you can do it. Remember, taking D, for example, we've got the root, and we've got a triad up here, which looks an awful lot like the C triad, but it's actually the higher chord note extensions of D. But for argument's sake, it's a C triad. You probably know at this point you can play a C triad C, E, G, or you can play it C, E, G, or you can play it C, E, G, or you can play it C, E, G. Those are called inversions. So now, what happens if you play the inversions of this C triad anywhere you want, while maintaining this D root, or 2 D roots? How about that? All of a sudden you've got a powerhouse instead of just this, right? Instead of just the old D7, you've got fantastic fireworks made out of a D11 chord, because you can invert this C triad anywhere you want. Okay, now finally we're going to get to the song. When you see me get to D7, I might play this, I might play this, I might play this. When I get to G7, I might play this, right? Or I might play this or this. Those are all inversions of the F major triad. It's a lot of stuff to think about, but you know what? It's really manageable bites. You can get your brain around this pretty easy, because you're just thinking F triads, or you're thinking C triads, because the slash chords are so powerful. Let's talk just for a second about how slash chords are written. Now, don't blame me, but this is really kind of confusing. So I'm going to try and clear it up as much as I can. This slash chord terminology and the symbol was made up by somebody other than David Sprunger. So let's take a look at it. When you take G7 and you change it into its slash chord equivalent, you know you play an F major triad in your right hand over a G. Okay? But unfortunately, the popular terminology or symbol for this is F slash G. Look at that. The F is on the left, but it's played by the right hand. And to add to the confusion, the G, it's on the right, and as you know, it's played by the left hand. So just that alone could put you in the nut house. especially when the drummer kicks off a fast tempo and you're getting your hands all tied up in knots. But there's a bit of good news. If you look at this from a different perspective, it's actually easy to understand. Every time a slash chord symbol is written on a lead sheet or a chord chart around the world, that slash is never straight up and down. It's actually always angled to the right, like you see there. So if you consider that instead of being on the left, the F is actually still above the slash, it becomes much easier to understand that it's being played by the right hand because it's above. And the same is true for the other side of the slash. Look at that G. Instead of considering that it's on the right, remember the slash is angled a bit, so the G is actually underneath that slash. So consider the G on the bottom being played by the left hand, a single note or a couple Gs if you want to. So instead of thinking left and right, think above and below. The F is over the G, or the F major triad played by your right hand is over the G. See, you're not confused. It's good. It's easy to grasp once you start thinking vertically instead of horizontally. Now let's put those slash chords to work. Here's the same song again. Let's go through really slow one time just to make it clear. Swing low, then you've got F over G, our first slash chord. Now, remember, I've got some time on that chord before I sing the next line, Sweet Chariot, so I can invert that F rhythmically. Maybe I'll do this, right? Got a lot of things you can play now. You can move that right hand around, and you're still keeping that G11 chord, or F over G, all created from that G7, right? Going on, Sweet Chariot, C to G. Coming for to carry me home. Then we've got another slash chord, C over D. And again, I may invert that C. I may play it in a few locations. Second line, swing low. Here it is, F over G. You know what to do. Sweet Chariot, C to G. Coming for to carry. Now on carry, I've thrown in another D7. So I'm going to do this. Or I'll do this, couple Ds in the left hand. Or I may do this, right? I'm driving that point home. You can invert that C up on top anywhere you want. And back to G. All right, that was nice and slow. I hope you understand where we're going. We're going to kick the tempo up full speed ahead and go through again. And every time there's a dominant 7 chord, we're going to make the slash chord equivalent. And I hope you see that that works out great. On all the other chords that we really haven't done anything special with, I'm going to go ahead and just have some fun with it. And I'm going to throw in some gospel riffs and some blues riffs and some chord substitutions. And I don't mean to confuse you. What I'm trying to do is just whet your appetite for some of the more advanced lessons. So any of the chords that are not slash chords, you'll see me doing all kinds of fun stuff with. But I'm going to try and be real clear when it comes to those slash chords and lay down everything I did in this last slow example. So here's the whole thing all together, up to tempo.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
I hope this has been a revelation for you. Slash chords are one of those rare and precious musical bits of information that can really transform your playing quickly. And here's a great thing. Slash chords are not limited to just transforming dominant 7th chords into fantastic chords. Slash chords can be used to transform many of the basic chords that people play every day into fantastic chords instantly. In fact, this has just been one lesson on one type of slash chord transformation. You can check out all of the lessons by going to PlayPianoTODAY.com. In this website, there's a wealth of online piano and keyboard lessons that you can dig into right away, including this lesson.